Hey, it's Drybear. And today I'm going to save you a lot of gold and time with a secret confirmation we just got that I don't really see anyone talking about. And it pertains to the items that drop and the trading that will be available in the game. But first, you should come by my live stream and hang out with me. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you don't come hang out with me in the community, then the next time you do a lift and peel seal on a piece of food, it's going to tear and you're going to have to poke it. Now, the thing I'm talking about today is the restriction that we know of for trading. You won't be able to trade legendary or above items to other players, but you will be able to trade rares, yellow items. And at first, we all thought this was a terrible thing because we wanted to be able to have a market where you could trade items, you could have items that you go back and forth with, and it creates that economy that we really, really like. However, it's not as bad as you might think at first glance, because what we have confirmed now is that the yellow items, the rare items, can drop with exactly the same stats as the highest level items in the game, which means that you will be trading good base stat yellow items to other players, and then they will be modifying them by imprinting collected aspects on them and increasing their value and upgrading them. So the market is still going to exist with very good rolled rare items, and this is how I want to save you lots of lost gold and time, because while you're playing, especially once you move into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 and start doing your Nightmare Dungeons, pay very close attention to the rare items that you get, their base item level, their item stats, their weapon damage on weapons, because if you get an excellent roll, especially accessories that can have resource vulnerable damage on them, all of these excellent scalers, if you do get a very good yellow, it could be worth a lot. And it also could be very valuable to you to increase your gear, because that base item, even though you're getting rares at endgame drop, can be easily imprinted, crafted, upgraded, and converted into one of the best in slot items that you have. Without having this knowledge, you could very easily just salvage or sell a goated, excellent rare yellow item that might actually be one of the best items you could get. And if you didn't know about this, you would just walk right by it and not give it a second glance. Now that we know that, let me walk you through a very basic summary of what to look for when you're looking for the items. Of course, we're going to learn a lot as we start pushing. I'm going to get my first character through Nightmare at 100 and then start working on all classes and making build guides for you guys, but a very high level synopsis of what to look for on items so that you have that in the back of your head when you're wondering if a yellow is actually insanely valuable. The core of what we're talking about, if you don't know what the damage buckets are, and we still have some more testing to 100% confirm it, but there are some very high value damage scalers that are worth more than others. The first one and the most important is going to be vulnerable damage scaling. This exists as its own special little snowflake modifier. It will always be a damage multiplier scaler, which is excellent, highly valuable. And as of right now, unless they change it, vulnerable damage does not share any additive effects with any other damage type. So if you find an item that has vulnerable damage scaling on it, it automatically gives it significantly higher value. You also want to go into your options and enable advanced tooltips. This will make it so when you look at an item, it'll show you the range that is available for the stat. And that way you'll be able to see is if it rolled the max possible roll for that item. Look at the item level itself, especially when you're in endgame. Make sure you have high item level items, the yellows themselves especially, and look at the stat range. If they roll the maximum value on something, then you know that whatever that something is now going to be worth more because it rolled the highest possible value. The next one you want to know about is going to be your crit strike chance and your crit damage. Just like vulnerable damage, it does exist in its own bucket, its own category of damage, and so it will scale independently. So crit strike and crit damage are also exceptionally valuable. So getting those on an item, especially getting both of those on one item with a high value or max roll, makes that item significantly more valuable. Percent all damage is also quite useful. It doesn't scale as significantly as vulnerable damage does, but it is nice to have and makes any build better. So if you see an item that has percent all damage on it, especially if it's close to max or a full max roll, that also will add item value. Next, you have resource generation. This is a stat that can exist on some of the item slots, and this will do exactly what you think it does. It means that as you're attacking with your abilities, you generate more resource. what'll happen towards the end of the game as you get your final build, people will start wanting to work out of their build, their builder. And they can do that by getting optimized gear that allows them to generate significantly more resource and no longer have to spend global cycles on using their builder to build resource. So resource generation is also a big one. Look for high values of that. The next one is going to be movement speed on boots. These can actually go pretty high. Early on in the game while you're leveling, you'll find some that are single digit or maybe 10% or 11%. But as you push towards the late game, that number can get significantly higher in the mid 20s and even more. So if you find a yellow boot that has good stats on it and it has like 25% movement speed, even though it's a yellow rare item, that could be worth a lot. Another big pickup is core skill damage. Most builds in the game rely on a core skill for their damage. Not all. There are some very specific ones that don't, but core skill damage as a percent scaler is also very valuable for a lot of builds that use it as their primary. So think about like Whirlwind build or Ice Shards or Fireball or any of those that use that as their core damage, that core skill. Percent core skill damage is also going to be very valuable. You'll also want to keep an eye out for cooldown reduction. Some builds really rely on cooldown reduction, and there's a global stat scaler for that. So that one is also really, really good. So in general, you're looking for the valuable scalers like crit damage or vulnerable damage or crit to vulnerable targets. Those are going to be super high value and high interest for a lot of people. And then get all the other stats that scale up with that. Turn on advanced tooltips. Make sure you have that on so you can see when it's a max roll. Look for movement speed on boots, and generally just keep an eye out for good yellows. You might even, if you're really savvy at it and you get good at reading the item while you're leveling, you might even be able to sell off some really goated yellows while you're leveling. That could be a twink item for people that want to gear up their alts or fast level across the board, especially on rings and amulet and weapons. Those are going to be huge. The rings themselves can roll some of the best stats in the game, like vulnerable damage, resource generation, that, and everything along those lines. So I want to make sure there was a PSA going out for this so everyone knows to not just, I recommend salvaging everything until level 50. Then after level 50, sell all of your yellows and blues for gold, but make sure you're keeping an eye out for good yellows that could be traded or could be upgraded to be extremely strong items. And that's what I got for you today. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment, whatever you want to say. It helps the algorithm show this video to more people, which helps me directly. And if you have any questions or comments, come hang out with me on my live stream. I'd be happy to chat with you. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.